Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films NFL Draft Barbecue. That's big board questions. And look who I have today. Famous guest, favorite guest, Mr. Chris Aguilera from the Deep Cover Pod, also known as Chris Just Joking. Chris, welcome to the barbecue, my friend. And before we get into business, let's talk about your business, man. Where can people find you, and tell them what you've been working on? Because I've been noticing.
You can find me on Twitter, Chris Just Joking. You could find me on the Deep Cover podcast too. I host that with Kerry Stevenson and Michael Crawford. So just catch us doing that, and every now and then I'll throw up a quick video about some players in the draft.
Yeah, I liked your video on Bernhard Ryman. That was my favorite one that you did. Sold me on him a little bit. I still have some questions, but I really liked that video. My personal favorite. If anybody wants to check that out. And of course, Chris's information will be linked below. So go ahead, check out his work, Deep Cover Pod. Obviously, guys that I'll all get along with. So Chris, one more thing before we get down to business. We got a barbecue going here. So paint me the picture of Chris Aguilera at a barbecue. What is the vibe like? Do you bring anything? What are you eating? Do you do any dancing? Are you late for the party? Lay back in the cut? Paint me the picture, sir.
Yeah, I'm definitely bringing the music. That's that's one of the main things for a good barbecue is the music. So I'm bringing the music. Maybe smoke some ribs or something like that. We got to make sure that we have it real good and the music is right.
Good. When you said smoke some, I was getting a little worried about this as a family broadcast, but you ended it with ribs. Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah.
So centers are on Chris's mind for good reason. At the time of this recording, the Ravens haven't signed any centers. Looks like Pat McCary, Tristan Colon Castillo, who, by the way, is Tristan Colon, as far as I know right now. He cut the Castillo out, but I always still call him TCC. So I'm trying to train myself with that. But Chris, I guess we can't talk centers without talking the top guy on everybody's board when it comes to centers. And that's Tyler Linderbaum.
Tyler Linderbaum, I think he's a guy that's been just a little bit overrated in a sense. Not trying to trash him or anything, but when people try to put him in the same conversation as a generational talent, I don't agree with that. Generational talent is dominant tape. It's not good tape. It's dominant tape. When we think of generational, we think of Quentin Nelson. When you put on his Notre Dame tape, he was dominating people at that level. Tyler Linderbaum, he has good tape, but he isn't consistently dominating folks on his tape at Iowa. So that's where I differentiate between good and generational. And I think he's a good prospect. I don't think he's a scrub. I don't think anything like that. But when you're talking about, top 10, top 15 pick, I'm not sure I agree that he's there for me. I think he's falls along that same category as like Garrett Bradbury, who's somebody that I liked a lot too. But as far as top 10, top 15, you don't really see those guys go that high unless it's someone that's really special. And I think Garrett Bradbury's the highest one. I think he went 19. He's been the highest one over the last decade or so.
Yeah, James Daniels comes to mind too when I look at Linderbaum, and I'm pretty much with you. I have him at number 20 on my board, which doesn't count quarterbacks at all. At all. So you're looking at him being picked 23, 24 is around the range I see him going. And Chris, I'm going to try to have someone on the show. So anybody out there that really likes Tyler Linderbaum, I'm going to try to have somebody try to take because they're out there that love Linderbaum.
I already know who you could have on.
Garnett.
Garnett.
Yeah,
that's the guy. That's him.
He's the leader of the train. So, okay,
go
ahead.
What I want to say though is if he's the pick for the Ravens, let's say they trade back and they get him at like 21 or whatever, I'm not mad at the pick because I think he's a good player. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll turn into a really good pro. But at 14, I can't go there.
Me neither. I have 10 guys on the board, as you see, Chris, that stick out. When you talk about generational talent, that might be might be overstating how I feel about those 10 guys, but I feel like all 10 guys will find themselves in a Pro Bowl pretty early in their career and have that all pro potential. So, yeah, I'm with you. If I can't get one of those guys, then I'm going for a corner or a defensive lineman or someone who can win one-on-one, whereas a center, as you know, is a position of support. You can get by and you can win with a good center. It doesn't have to be a superstar. So who else on your list do you have in here? I'm taking a quick glance at my big board, and I see that, Jurgens is one of my favorite guys. I like Barham. Who do you want to talk about first, though, Chris?
Let's just go in order. Your
Okay.
61st guy, Dylan Parham. He's a guy who I liked a lot. Actually, Michael Crawford at Abu Khari, he's the guy. He put me onto him first, like 2-3 months ago or something like that. And he was like, "Take a look at this dude." And this is when we still thought he was 285 pounds. And he was like, "Yo, look at this right tackle. He's only 285 pounds, former tight end." I'm like, "Damn, like he's pretty impressive." He was holding his own against Myjai Sanders, and Myjai Sanders, one of the best pass rushers in this class. So it really put my antennas up. And then when the Senior Bowl came, he weighed in at 313 pounds. So I'm like, wait a second, this dude was listed as 285 pounds and he's 313. And then they moved him over to center, and he was the best center at the Senior Bowl, and this was his first time snapping. So it was really really fun to watch his tape and go through it. Um, he's a guy, like I said, he has that positional flexibility where he's played guard before, he's played right tackle, and then now he's making that transition over to center. So it's kind of funny that he's had sort of like this Patrick McCarry kind of role with Memphis, and he's been able to play all of these positions and do it at a pretty good level. It's the same way that we saw with Patrick McCarry.
And I wanted to add, people might think, well, he gained 30 pounds. What's up? Is he just gaining weight like you and I might? No, it's not like that. The guy put on some good weight, some good muscle. When he showed up at the Senior Bowl, he looks good. He's not out of shape. It's not in his belly, I guess is what I'm saying. He put on good
Yeah,
weight. And
and he said, my bad. He said that at the Senior Bowl, when they asked him about the weight, he said that he's been playing, at over 300 pounds. It's just for whatever reason, Memphis never updated his bio
I
and the
missed
weight in his
that.
bio.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's strange. Like, why would you do that to one of your players? Because if you have 285 next to an offensive tackle, that's not going to help that guy get drafted. So
Well, yeah, and you can't put on 30 pounds of muscle in 2 months or whatever it is.
yeah,
So that makes sense. You know what I mean? He was probably playing around 305 maybe,
hmm
and then put on another 10, 15 pounds of good weight.
yeah,
So, but I love him as far as for somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience at center, Chris, his pad level and the way he comes off there is really impressive. And then I also think that he's the type of player that if you have somebody who's, some injury situations on the line, this is a guy who you could play at multiple positions and would probably be your best backup guard as well as a center. I think he has that kind of upside to where if somebody like your left guard gets hurt or you're having problems there, you could put him there, move him mid-season, and stick somebody a little less dynamic of an athlete at center. So I think he gives you that option if that is how your team is shaping up at the moment.
yeah. And like I said, Patrick McCarry, that's what he's done for the Ravens. And I think Dylan Parham, I don't think, I know he has a lot more as far as physical skill set. It's way higher than Patrick McCarry's was coming out of a Cal a few years ago. So, you watch him and you can see the kind of athlete that he is. He had one of the most impressive RAS scores out of any of the linemen coming out of this draft. So there's a lot to work with there. The only thing is just getting him up to speed as a center. And like I said, at the Senior Bowl, he was looking like the best one there, and that was his first time really, working at that position. So if he can learn that quickly, then that you got something special with him.
So would he be your, not to put you on the spot, I don't even know if you're a rankings kind of guy, but Would he be your number 2 center in this class? Are you with me on that, or do you like any of the other guys a little better?
No, I would put him at center too. I like him there. I really like the core strength that he has, the athleticism that he has. Obviously, he doesn't have the desired mass or length that ideally you would want from an interior guy. But I think with him, he just has so many natural gifts and natural ability that you can't teach. That I think you can really mold him into a really really solid offensive lineman.
Yeah, yes, Chris. He has that body control that I love looking for in all kinds of linemen, especially. Not sure if he wrestled in his background, but it just seems like he's got that natural body control balance to where, I mean, you're not going to play a perfect game, Chris. There's going to be times where you get beat off the snap. He's the kind of guy that has that recovery skill. Plus, he has a nice blend of mobility. You mentioned it in his relative athletic scores, the RAS scores, and power. This guy is not a pushover. Say, oh, okay, well, he doesn't have the desired measurables from a physical standpoint, but he's got that natural power in his game, and that's why he's my number 2 ranked center. Just an overall philosophical question for you, Chris. I got him at 61, which means that's a guy I'd be looking at in the 3rd round. If we took Parham in round 2 with that 45th overall pick, would you think that was a reach, but you'd still be happy with it? Would you think that's a great pick at that spot? How would you feel about a guy like Parham in the 2nd round?
Like everything, it depends who else is on the board.
Yeah.
It always depends who else is there. Because if you ask me, like, would I rather have Parham or George Pickens, I might go George Pickens
Me
because
too.
I just think he's the better player. And but I would not be mad at it because I'm really really high on him. But like I said, it all depends who's there. But I think he's worth a 2nd round pick. Maybe not as high as 45, but maybe like a later round 2nd pick.
All right, there you go. So if your board was really dried up and all your favorites went and the Ravens ended up taking them at 45, you'd be happy about that. So the
Yeah.
next guy on my list, Chris, if you don't mind me moving on, is there anything else you
No,
want to
no,
say
you
on
go
Park?
right ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at Cole Strange, I believe, is next on my board. Let me go ahead and find him. Oh, actually, it is not.
I
It
know
is
it's not.
it's my favorite.
I
It's
know
my
it's not.
favorite. Yeah, bring up that board again, Mr. Huddle It Up Films, and you will see Cam Jurgens at number 79 with those 2 beautiful stars around him. And those stars mean that he is my positional favorite. At center, my own personal favorite, the guy I think I have ranked higher than the majority of people, is Cam Jurgens. Just what an athlete, what a monster, plays with attitude. I think that he's a natural born butt kicker in the center position. So when you're looking at moving on from a Bradley Bozeman, who for the first time in a while, Chris, provided us some mass and some power from the center position, I think Jurgens has got that ability in him at the NFL level. Just a tremendous athlete. We talked about what a good athlete Parham was. Well, Jurgens doesn't take a backseat to just about anybody in this draft.
Yeah, it's funny because I keep mentioning him, but Mike Crawford at Al Bukhari, he calls him. Well, we have a thing on deep cover where we say great value players. So Tyler Linderbaum, he's the guy that's going to go in the 1st round. Cam Jurgens is the guy that's going to go later. So he's the great value Tyler Linderbaum because he's athletic as all hell. He can get up to the 2nd level, and he's like a heat-seeking missile once he's up there. And you kind of see the same similarities between him and Linderbaum. It's just Linderbaum just a little bit better and a little bit more consistent with his technique. Jurgens, like I said, man, he's a great, great athlete, and it really catches you by surprise because you don't expect this guy who's, like a little meatball to be that explosive and be that agile in space. And he does it with such fluidity that it almost doesn't look real when you look at it.
Yes, it's NFL. Like it sticks out as, oh, wow, that guy belongs in the NFL when you see it on the college level. And but yes, his tenacity too, Chris, is something I always come back to. You see him blocking guys downfield, out of bounds. And what the heck is a center doing blocking somebody out of bounds from the middle of the field? Like when you see something like that, it's not a wide receiver or something. It's like, man, this guy's impressive. Did you notice any of that on tape as well?
I did, and one of the notes that I have on him is similar to one of the notes that I had on Icky Kwanu, who everybody knows. You know, I love Icky, but sometimes that aggressiveness, that overzealousness, could work against him, and it'll cause him to kind of mess up with his technique as far as dropping his head down, not really, staying under control and being able to keep his hands under fire and just get up into the defender's chest. And sometimes he'll just get a little overzealous or drop his head. And to me, that's just something that you always want to rein it back a little bit instead of telling the player like, oh, you got to play with more attitude. You got to play with more attitude. You could always rein that in a little bit and be like, oh, just play a little bit more under control. We love the aggressiveness, which is something that he for sure has, just like Icky does. But just play a little bit under control. And I think if he does that and he's able to kind of just in his head slow down just a little bit more, I think he'll be one of the best in this class.
I do too. I do too. And again, my positional favorite because I like him better than I see the rest of the people in the room like him. And with Jurgens, I think it's a great point that you notice that he gets overzealous with his play, and it cost him at times. And I just look at like Linderbaum's a tough guy to compare these other prospects to because Linderbaum is so polished and so smooth, and a positional blocker, crafty. He's got all of that. There's a reason he's probably going to go in the first round. But Jurgens' issues, like you alluded to, Chris, to me they're fixable. They're very fixable. It's not he's not a project. He just needs to get his hand placement, his body a little more under control before he turns it up. And yes, Chris, you much rather have a player on your team that you have to calm down a little bit than a guy that you have to pump him up and get him into the game and get him aggressive. And but yeah, Jurgens, I don't think he's going to have any problem with that. I don't think he's going to be intimidated one bit. He's going to be wanting to take it to the NFL player across from him.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think one of the constants that we'll see with these centers is that they're all like just lumps of clay ready to be molded because they all have the physical capabilities. When you look at how they are in space, how they play, just the physical attributes that they have, they're all just ready to be molded into and take it to the next level. That's why I wanted to talk about this group so much because it's probably one of the favorite center classes that I've seen in a long time, and I really do like a lot of these players.
Me too, and I got a lot of flack on Twitter for the Bozeman situation, and then people want J.C. Tretter, and I just how the money and the resources go with the Ravens. They're not just going to go handing out contracts left and right. They're going to be pick and choose. They're going to say, we want a free safety. We're going to sign a high price one. So I didn't want to, me personally, my style of attack was to go through the draft to find the next in line. Because as you know, we've had these run from Jensen to Skura to Bozeman, these late round draft picks to undrafted guys. Even Tristan Colon has played well for us. They can just step right in and man that position. And you don't notice them when you're grading the tape, Chris. I mean, you don't notice, say, oh man, we lost the game because the center wasn't executing his blocks well and that kind of thing. Like it is a positional position of support. So I was in the minority. I felt like because I know fans love Bradley Bozeman. I mean, I love him too. The way he worked his butt off and earned the next contract. I thought he should have got paid more. But, just to point out during this episode, Chris, that the Ravens have done a really good job developing people at the center position.
Yeah, and that's the plan that they've been on. You alluded to it with Jensen, Bozeman. This is what they do at center. They want to develop those projects, those UDFA guys, late round guys, and they really want to mold them like we're talking about here and groom them into being, starters on the line. And it's like you said, they don't draft centers high. They don't pay centers. So this is just following the formula that Ozzie, laid down for years in Baltimore. And, it looks like it's continuing with EDC if he doesn't take a Linderbaum or sign a J.C. Tretter. And it looks like it'll be the same thing in Baltimore as far as the late round center.
Yeah, I think that that's the way it's going to go. Although in this particular draft, Chris, with the value that is out there, I think they're going to go a little higher this time and draft one of these guys in the third or fourth round. The guys we're talking about today on this show. And the next guy I want to bring up is a guy that really stuck out to me at the Senior Bowl because he was going up against some big guys. They looked a lot bigger than him. Here he is playing center. Cole Strange, number 82 on my board, has experience at guard. I don't think he'll be able to stick at guard, Chris. Maybe you can comment on that because I think center is going to be a spot where he doesn't have to be the biggest, strongest guy. He can really let his mobility and climbing up to the second level work in his favor at center. My notes on him, Chris, I wanted to just get it out. His hands are very sticky. He's also another guy who plays through the whistle. But his hands really stuck out to me as far as once he's inconsistent with his placement at times, but when he squares you up, bigger guys, I mean, visibly bigger guys aren't going anywhere with Cole Strange. He's got them big old mitts. What stuck out to you, Chris? Because a lot of things stuck out to me with Cole Strange.
It's funny that you say that, the grip, because that's literally under the RAS score stuff. That's literally the first line. Really great grip strength. And then I put
Really?
extra points because he doesn't do it with gloves.
Okay.
You know, he's one of those dudes, you know, like Vladimir Guerrero from baseball a few years back. He's the dude that he doesn't do it with gloves on, which is rare. And but as far as the guard thing, I think he can play guard. He had 41 starts at left guard down at
Right.
Chattanooga, and he played some too at the Senior Bowl. He got some reps over there at left guard, and he did well. You know, just like he did, you know, his whole time there. He was one of the best performers at the Senior Bowl, and like you said, he was a guy that once he got his hands on you, once he got him inside the defender's chest, there was no letting go. You weren't getting away from him after that. Once he clinches those hands up and he got a hold of you, that's it. Rep is over because you're not getting away from that. And I was trying to look to see if he did any wrestling or something like that, but I couldn't find anything. But he looked like he had that damn judo grip on people because they were just not able to get off at all.
So, Chris, I don't want to sidetrack this too much because we're talking about centers, but my worry about him at guard is facing some of these like longer players, like a Calais Campbell or something. You know how they are on the weak side of the line, on the left side of the line. It's a lot of length over there. So my worry would be like my question to you is, Chris, I think he would struggle against NFL players like that. You don't worry about that as much with him, huh?
I mean, I think just in general, I mean, even at center, I have it on my notes here too. He still needs to add a little bit more mass. He's a bit of an older prospect. I think he's a 6-year senior. He did the Van Wilder route. So, it's going to take some time for him to add that mass because I think a lot of these guys, the common theme is they need to add more mass. It's not really about the weight. It's about just, adding that grown man weight, that grown man mass that, you go through as you get older. And
That's right.
I think if he can do that, he'll be able to kind of just get some more sand in his pants and be able to really anchor down on those bull rushes where he just needs to kind of just sit his butt down and just sit there and not be pushed back into the quarterback. But like I said, I think that'll take a little bit of time for him to get.
And both Jurgens and Strange to me, Chris, are guys that if we took him in the third round, even with that first pick, what is it, like 85 or something we got, I would be happy. Even if I had other players higher on my board, I'd be like, all right, I can see where the Ravens are going with this because to me, players like that are a great value. And then also on the age thing, I don't worry about that at all with offensive linemen, especially. Especially at center for the Ravens, where chances are they're not signing a second contract. So, okay, I get Cole Strange, but in the prime of his football life, you know what I mean? Okay, that sounds like a good deal to me. I'm not worried about where they're going to be 4 years from now, any of them really, but especially when you look at a center. What's your take on that?
On the age thing?
Yeah, well, if you had anything else to add too, but yeah.
I mean, age, I don't really give a shit about. I mean, I don't really care about. I don't care nothing about age. Like, it doesn't matter to me. If you're good, you're good. You know, Calvin Ridley, he was a guy where they made a big fuss about his age, and you know, he was. Unfortunately, we should have known about his gambling, but you know, a lot of people were held up on the age thing, and I didn't really care about that. It's like, man, if you can ball, you can ball. Like, you know, I mean, there is something to be said about those young dudes who come in, you know, as a freshman or a true sophomore and can dominate college football. You know, that'll make my antennas go up with like a Jamar Chase or Derek Stingley.
Stingley, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at that and I'll really be like, okay, I need to keep an eye on him. But the older dudes, I mean, you would like to see them dominate too, but I don't really put much into it. Like I said, if you can ball, you can ball. And Cole Strange, man, he'd be a big like a big time mix up for what the Ravens go for because his testing was the best out of any offensive lineman. His RAS score was a 9.95.
There you
That
go.
is
Yeah.
elite of the elite right there. And that's something that I've been wanting a little bit more of when it comes to the Ravens offensive linemen are not only guys who can test well, you know, as a linear athlete, but also be explosive and be able to move around and have that lateral quickness and be able to mirror guys and not just have that difficult time redirecting and shifting their weight. And I think Cole Strange fits that. And like you said, if they would take him in the third round, I'd be happy with that.
Yes,
Oh, and
definitely.
then also according to the Draft Network, the Ravens spent a lot of time with him down in Mobile.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I did not see that. That's great information. I'm glad to see it. And you talked about the possible philosophical change on the line. That's something that I've been harping on for a little bit. It's not that you can still run, some power, some inside zone and all that stuff with more athletic players. But, the screen passes, Chris. I mean, I'm sure we talked about that at some point in our game reviews. It's like, man, we're drafting bigger linemen who aren't necessarily moving people off the street anyway and lack mobility. So Morgan Moses at right tackle, man, he can really move. I mean, his movement when I first looked at him after we acquired him stood out to me. I mean, he can go sideline to sideline. Athletic center would go a long way. Zeitler can move. Stanley can move. So I mean, you look at it. Maybe this Ravens team can run a more diverse scheme with a more mobile center.
yeah, man, it's definitely something that you want to see. You know, the guy who pops into my mind right away is Alejandro Villanueva, and you saw once he lost that first initial move, there was
Yep.
no recovery coming from him. No recovering whatsoever. And with Ronnie Stanley, I know Ronnie Stanley's, you know, one of the best left tackles in the league. But you see him lose from an initial move, but then he's able to recover, and that's what makes Ronnie Stanley so good. Is his ability to redirect and recover, and that's just what I want to see more of on the Ravens offensive line. Like just guys who can recover when they're beat off the first move of a defender.
Because let's face it, I mean, Lamar Jackson's your quarterback. It's not like he's a statue. He's the exact opposite. So as long as you can recover at some point, you don't have to like quote unquote win the rep, but just don't get beat clean like we've seen from some of these bigger left guards, especially. Man, it's just like beat right off the snap in Lamar's face right away. Lamar's plays blown up at that point. Play is just out the window. It's Lamar save us with some kind of freestyle. And
Yeah,
that's not what you want. You want your quarterback in a groove, no matter how well he can adjust to stuff like that. Lamar's about the best in the NFL at making something out of nothing. But yeah, why put him in that position? You want Lamar in a groove, throwing the ball, running the ball, doing what he
exactly.
wants.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the last center on my list, he's actually the last guy I have now. Chris, I'll be adding to that blue section. So as the series goes along, so I
Okay.
don't just have 90 guys that I consider good value in this draft. It'll probably grow, till over 100. But Luke Fortner, now he's a guy that has plenty of experience at right guard. Well, I don't know if you have the number. I want to say he played 23 games or something like that at right guard.
Yeah, 23 at right guard and 13 at center.
So again, and he's a big guy. He's big enough to handle that right guard. In the SEC, he did not look overmatched. He handled his own and then some at right guard, moving to center, looking for a future. But he'd be one of those guys that seems to me, at least, I want to get your opinion, fits the old Ravens or the traditional Ravens approach for a center. Big guy, some mobility, great eyes for Fortner, by the way. I love the way he sees things and can anticipate things and goes beyond what you would look at him as an athlete.
Yeah, man, he definitely looks like the Ravens type, especially when you look at his off the field accomplishments and how he is. First of all, he's a team captain. We know the Ravens love their team captains. He's like a damn near a genius. You know, he has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. He's set to get 2 master's degrees this spring.
Me too. Me too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you too?
I mean, it's April 1st.
Damn.
Yeah, April 1st.
Oh, I was about to say, man, good for you.
No, sir.
But yeah, man, he fits what they look for, and he's kind of like he would kind of pick up where Bradley Bozeman left off because he does a lot of good stuff for the community too. Like, he built a ramp. He built a special ramp for people who are in wheelchairs to get into the stadium at the Kentucky games. So it's like, damn, like this dude is thinking about accessible wheelchair places, and who thinks it, like what football player is thinking about that? And
That's right.
that just shows what kind of dude he is off the field. Now on the field, all you have to do, just watch one game. That's all you have to do. Watch him against Georgia, and you see him hold his own against Big Jordan Davis. You see him hold his own against Devontae Wyatt. Obviously, he didn't dominate them. Who's going to dominate those two guys? But he held his own, and I was really, really surprised by how well he did going toe to toe with those two guys.
And he saw it every week in the SEC too. So that there you go, man. The Georgia game though stands out on its own because it basically everybody he was facing is going to be NFL linemen. Who's number 88, by the way, that I just want to draft right now. I can't remember his name.
Oh, I don't know.
Georgia.
I just call him Baby Calais Campbell. That's what I call him.
Mercy. Like if I could draft that kid in the top 10 this year and just, not be able to play him until he's 20 or whatever it is, I would do it. That's how much I liked him from tape because I'm trying to watch all these other Georgia stud. 88 keeps dropping out. But yeah, Fortner, he did hold his own against those guys. And of course, SEC being the best football out there, he got to see it week in, week out. The intangible part, it's funny how sometimes that gets twisted into a negative. If it's not community work, if somebody has other kind of interests, that's deemed a negative. But for Fortner, a guy like Fortner who's doing that kind of thing, I mean, not taking anything away from Luke, that's just pretty awesome. It kind of lets you know that his perspective is a little more grown than some of these young men who, aren't to that point where they're ready to give back and give something. It's still all about them and them trying to chase their dreams. Luke's got that like old man, wise man perspective on things. That's what that tells me anyway. It's a context clue.
Yeah, and one of the things, like if you look up his testing numbers, they don't look good at all. If you look up his testing numbers, but it's one of those things where, how did he look on the field? Because on the field, you see him getting out in space, and he looks clean. He looks crisp. He doesn't look like he's lumbering down the field. He looks like a really good athlete on the field, but testing wise, he doesn't. And this is where you have to kind of, use what you saw on the film, and you kind of just throw out the testing numbers, and you're like, you know what? I don't really care. I saw him being able to execute pulls against SEC linebackers and be able to get to the second level. So when it comes to that, that's when one of those rare moments where you just throw out the testing numbers and you're like, I don't even care because I see it on tape against high level competition.
So I'm going to speak for both of us here, Chris. If the Ravens draft Luke Fortner, just think darn good football player. This guy knows what he's doing. He's experienced, and it's very, eyes are something that I usually say for defense because, you want to see the ball, have a feel of what the offense is doing. But he is one step ahead of the game from the center. It looks like, of course, he's the first one to snap the ball. He knows when the play starts, so he starts ahead of everybody else. But this guy stays ahead during the play, which I just love that about him. You can say what you want about his testing numbers. Doesn't really mean a whole lot to me because, like you said, you handle athletic guys like Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, and the rest of the guys in the SEC. It says something. If you weren't a good enough athlete, they would expose you. So doesn't really mean that much to me at all. And really, the other guys that we talking about, it works both ways. With a guy like Cole Strange, you mentioned his RAS. I see it on the field. It's not like just this fake number where a guy runs a fast 40 and everybody thinks he's this, blazer on the field. Nah, man, like going back to Cole Strange for a second, he's a guy that I see the athleticism in his play. Same thing with Jurgens.
Yeah, and that's where you take into account the context of testing numbers. Like the one that sticks out to me the most is Miles Boykin. When Miles Boykin was on the field for Notre Dame, he didn't look like this, all-world athlete. Like he looked like he had some good athleticism, but you wouldn't think that he would test the way that he did. So when you kind of marry those two, you marry the testing numbers and what you saw on the field, it didn't really match up because you weren't seeing that explosiveness, that change of direction as far as the football field. So I think when you can see it on film and you can see it through the testing, then it's like, all right, it makes perfect sense. Just
It's a
like you
good
saw with Cole Strange.
Cole Strange, yeah, and the example I always use with Boykin, my thing lately, I've been trying to explain to people. It's not been like a big soapbox or anything, but I'll mention it from time to time. Is people say, okay, well, we got the 40 time, but that don't measure quickness. That's just speed. So they got that part down, but then they go to the 3-cone and the shuttle drill, which is, for anybody that doesn't know, they're basically going back and forth. They're not going in a straight line. So that's supposed to measure your change of direction and quickness. But for me too, Chris, I think that that's a little overrated as well, because for Ravens fans out there, Boykin, for example, scored much higher in quickness than James Prochet. You can say what you want about James Prochet's long speed, but he's one of the quicker, more sudden people on the field when it comes to changing directions. So if those numbers tell me that Boykin is quicker than Prochet, and I watch each of those guys try to change direction, it's like night and day, Chris.
Yeah, and that's why the film is so valuable because it lets you differentiate and it lets you make that decision for yourself instead of just being a slave to just numbers, numbers, numbers. I think there's a place for the numbers, but you also have to go by the tape as well. It can't just be straight numbers because if it was just solely based off of numbers, then we could just have machines draft players and they would have 100% hit rates. But we know that that's not the case because these guys who come out as the best testers and they in all of these projected models to be the best wide receiver or be the best player, it doesn't always work out that way. So it's not a 100% guarantee that these numbers will translate to success.
Yes, and for me, the numbers aren't something that I completely throw out. I love to watch the combine just because I love football, Chris. So I'm going to watch it every year. But for me, it's like one of those double check yourself things. Justin Jefferson was one of those. I remember a couple of years ago. Had no idea he was that fast. It didn't show on the film to me. And then I had to look further and look at some of his highlights, and I'm like, okay, when he wants to turn it on, he can, because you're not going to watch every game. So sometimes, in fact, for most of the top guys, I'll look at their highlights to see what it looks like when they're going on, because it's not just, if you look at it critically, Chris, you can knock people even on their highlight tape, be like, yeah, 3 of those sacks came against Joe Blow University. He had 5 sacks. So that tells me that, he basically got a bunch of garbage time numbers and stuff like that. Yeah. But this year, Rashad White, the running back guy I know you're familiar with, his play speed to me looked well below average, and he ran really well. His 40 time, I was sitting here with one of my buddies. I'm like, yeah, he's probably going to run late 4.5s. I'm like, Rashad White, I see like 4.58. And if he goes into 4.6s, he's in trouble. And whatever it was, maybe I'll put the number up there later, but it was, I think, in the 4.4s. I'm like, wait a minute, whoa. So I had to go back and watch an extra couple of games of Rashad White and get mine. That's how I use the numbers anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, every piece of information is valuable, whether it's the testing numbers, whether it's the film, whether it's what they do off the field, the medicals, every little bit of information helps. It's not the end all be all because these NFL teams, they get everything they get. And every draft they have busts. So it's you're trying to predict human beings and how they'll project into the NFL. So it's like it's never going to be a perfect process. You're always going to have misses.
I know. And for us here, what we do, we don't even get to talk to them, man. We don't even
Yeah.
get to interview them. We don't even get to see their medical records. We don't get to talk to the coaches who say sometimes we'll say, "Man, this guy was pain in the butt to get to practice," or "Man, there were so many off field incidents we covered before." Like we don't know any of that stuff, Chris. We're just like taking a shot at the dark and using its tape. So we do pretty well on that. At least from my perspective, I'm kind of cocky with that kind of thing. So but Chris, final thoughts, man. Like wrap up this center group. If you want to add like from a Ravens perspective, you know what I mean, tie it into what you think the Ravens will look like. Go ahead and give me a nice final segment, man. Go ahead and ramble on for a second.
Yeah, man. I it's kind of just like the tight end group. The tight end group. There's no guy that's like a Tyler Linderbaum. That's head and shoulders the number one guy. But this is the draft where I want them to take a center. I want them to take a tight end because it's not a top heavy group, but it is a very deep group and it has a lot of good players in it. And just with one of these four guys that we mentioned, I'll be ecstatic if the Ravens were able to add one of these guys, whether it's the second, the third, or the fourth round. Because I think if you can get one of these players in those rounds, I think you can have a really solid guy who could maybe not only start right now, but worst case scenario, you have a developmental guy who can maybe come in next year and come in as the starter and be able to take hold of that position instead of doing what they've done and take the 2 3 year slow approach with a UDFA or a late round guy. And they could really speed up the process and get one of these dudes who's ready to go. They're just ready to be molded into a NFL center.
That's why I'm hoping and predicting that it's not a sixth round pick or undrafted pick this time. That's why I hope, especially with all the fourth round picks that the Ravens
Yeah.
have. I mean, it just makes too much sense to get yourself a Luke Fortner or even a Parham a little earlier, probably, or Strange, just because I love McCary as that super sub, as that flexible guy. If things go south at right tackle, man, hey, we got Pat McCary. We can move out there. Or if an important guard spot, McCary, it just seems like he could handle anything. So instead of that 2 year project guy, I'm hoping, and I think they'll do it, Chris. A lot of times they're two separate things. But in this case, I hope they do it, and I think they'll do it. They're going to go ahead and grab a center in the mid rounds of this draft.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Because we know they're not going to deviate completely from what they do. I mean, we've seen it already where they didn't pay anybody. But I would like to see them at least put a little bit more draft capital into the position because that's all we want. We just want a little bit more draft capital into, investing into this position because we saw what happened last year to the offensive line. And we can't have that happen again. We know it. DaCosta knows it. Everybody knows it. We have to have contingency plan after contingency plan. We want everybody. If somebody gets hurt, all right, we're not worried about it. Boom, we have this guy to slot in. And with a guy like Cole Strange or Dylan Parham, we see these guys have that versatility where it's not just a center only, where you can put them out at right tackle if you need to. You can put them at left guard, right guard, center, and that adds even more value to what you can do. So hopefully they take a swing at one of these guys because, like I said, it's a really talented group and one of the most fun position groups I've seen in this class.
Yeah, and I thank you for choosing them because a lot of people go away from the offensive line or the people I've contacted already for the series. Edge rushers popular, tackles popular, and when you're talking about those plentiful positions, Chris, it's the running backs too. I would throw in with the centers and the tight ends. There's it's just been a complete headache for me trying to figure these guys out. What style running back you want? How many? Like I don't want to list 20 running backs on my board. That's ridiculous. You would never do that because you might as well just wait to the undrafted free agents and grab one of those guys if it's that deep and that talented. So, yes, those fourth round picks, Chris, are going to come in handy. I think that it's DaCosta mentioned He expects his top 80 guys to slip into the fourth round. 100% accurate as far as my experience in the draft. No matter what kind of list you make, Chris, one of the guys that you have in your top 80 is going to be there in round 4, and it's probably going to be closer to like 10 of them. You know what I mean? Because the boards are unpredictable, and the draft day is unpredictable. So yes, I'm looking at that running back, tight end, center, right in that 3rd to 4th round range, Chris. I feel like we can really fill out a good team and concentrate on these early picks, maybe on some studs at whatever position, be it defensive line, cornerback, wherever you can get a wide receiver even. I'm open to anything, really.
Yeah, man, I just really hope that they can add some offensive fire, not only firepower, but just, the guys up front. Because, like, I think we all have PTSD from what happened to the offensive line. And I know they do. Lamar probably does, because we saw he didn't trust those guys in the middle of the season. So we just have to have contingency plan and just get more help around Lamar. Right now it's all about him. Like, where he goes, that's where the team goes. If we have the offensive line in place, Lamar will be good.
And if you look at what's around the Ravens offense specifically, I mean, people focus on the wide receiver group, but you throw Andrews in there. I mean, he's catching passes as much as anybody. You go with Hollywood, Andrews, Bateman as your top 3 options to catch passes. That's good. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edward, assuming full health. That's good. You want blocking, move blockers. You got Boyle, you got Ricard. That's good. What's missing? What is the question mark? It's been the same question mark over and over again. Chris, I hope we draft a left tackle, maybe round 3, round 2, 3, something like that. Maybe even round 1 if we can get one of those studs that drop. But get somebody to be there in case Ronnie Stanley isn't ready. I would like to see us draft a guard. Tyree Phillips is already getting old in his Ravens rookie contract. Zeitler probably gone next year, so you're going to need a guard one way or another, and then of course a center. And these guys we mentioned today could fill probably either hole.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like you said, one of those top 3 left tackles falls, you don't even think about it. You take it. You take them, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, but what about if Ronnie's healthy? All right, good. That's a good problem to have. What if Rodney isn't healthy though? What would you rather have? Would you rather, like, it doesn't make sense. It's doing the same thing that you did last year, and it didn't work last year. So why would you go into the 2022 season without having a backup plan for Rodney Stanley? Because then you look dumb again if he's not ready to go.
Chris, I almost interrupted you like 3 times because I agree with you so much. Like, what is the one thing that can derail this team the fastest, Chris? Bad left tackle play. I'm talking not even right tackle, center guard. I'm talking left tackle. If we don't get that fixed, that's the one thing that can derail this team the fastest. You can do things on defense to cover up for a hole here or there, but if your left tackle's not playing well, if you go through another year of a Villanueva type play from that position, man, it really just dims your expectations overall for the Ravens. You need somebody. I mean, look at how much we had to use Ricard last year to help out the tackles. I mean, it just affects everything else on offense. So, Chris, I'm gonna try to nail you down for another show, bro, because I want to talk about that top 10 and the tackles in there, and maybe do another tackle episode with me if you can.
All right, no doubt. I'm with it.
All right, Chris. Well, I'm gonna say thank you to my football family. I know you enjoyed Chris. Make sure you check out all his info, especially the Bernhard Ryman. Working hard on his name, by the way, Chris. How am I doing with the Bernhard Ryman?
I think you're doing well. I'm not too sure. I think you're doing well.
Well, I called him Raymond for a while, and then I learned during the combine you say the hard I, Ryman. So
Ryman.
I got that part, but the Bernhard just don't flow off the tongue, man. Like,
yeah.
Trying to work on that, man. Trying to work on that. So, Chris, man, say goodbye to the people. I thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, man. Always good to be here, and peace to the folks. Thank you.